Hey, white women. Almost 9 years ago at my wedding, I called a black woman exotic, and I still cringe over it. Of course, I was not trying to be racist. I did not know that that was a racist thing to do, but somewhere I picked it up, right? Because I did it. And I feel so lucky that she very nicely pushed it back at me and said, "Look who's talking, little Miss Exotic." And I, on the one hand, like that because I love it when people know that I'm not just a normal American white girl. But at the same time, I could feel like, oh no, it doesn't feel good when someone says that about you. And I then, post-wedding, educated myself and apologized. This is an article from Everyday Feminism called 4 Reasons Why Calling a Woman of Color Exotic is Racist. Don't want to be your exotic, some delicate, fragile, colorful bird, imprisoned, caged, in a land foreign to the stretch of her wings. Suhair Hamad. Your eyes are like almonds. I want your hair. Your hair has such great texture. Asian women are all so beautiful. Are you as spicy in bed as you look? You look so exotic. Thank you, I think. I've heard all of these from my friends, folks I've dated, and even random strangers. While these statements might all sound like compliments, they're not. Although I'm from the Midwest, I often get treated like I am a piece of tropical fruit. I'm jumping around in this, so please go read this article if you want to know more. Those don't seem like a way to compliment someone. Despite the intention to express a compliment, what is actually being communicated when you call a woman of color exotic is a backhanded reminder that we are less normal, less human, and less real than white folks. I've dated men who seem to have a Pokemon approach to women of color. They have to collect us all. My rejection of the word exotic as a way to describe me might seem like I'm making a big deal out of something when someone is just trying to be nice to me. And true, some women of color might not individually find being called exotic harmful. But statements like, "you're so exotic," are laden with histories of ways women of color have been oppressed sexually, and they continue to other us by creating both a geographical and ideological difference between us and everyone else. Exotification serves as a way to dehumanize and simultaneously put us up on unrealistic pedestal. While all women of color aren't oppressed by racialized sexism in exactly the same ways, our bodies are still constantly under scrutiny. Below are 4 reasons why calling a woman of color exotic is racist. Exotic implies there's one normal standard of beauty. Reason 1. This is when they say, "you're beautiful for insert race here." Women of color are seen as exotic because we look different than the mainstream beauty ideal, which is almost exclusively white. And while some beautiful women of color have extreme recognition in mainstream culture, media representation whitewash these women by lightening their skin or shrinking their bodies. Beauty standards are a form of social, economic, and cultural currency. Beauty is a big deal because it shows up in whether or not individuals are treated with dignity and respect by society. When beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and the beholder is often a white, cis, heterosexual man, beauty narratives become racialized. White women are also burdened by standards of beauty, or while white women of color are completely alienated and othered from this ideal. An exotic woman is never truly seen as beautiful on her own terms. Okay, reason 2, it reduces women to the status of exotic animals. The dragon lady and lotus flower stereotypes draw on images of exotic flora and fauna to describe East Asian women. Indigenous women are pictured as primitive and savage. The fashion industry frequently portrays Black women as animalistic, draped in animal prints, and sometimes literally caged. By perceiving women of color as exotic, you're also imagining us as wild animals who need to be tamed. This is often used in conjunction with the depiction of men of color as dangerous predators and beasts. So literally dehumanizing language. People of color were literally animals on display in a zoo. The perception and treatment of women of color as exotic animals shows up in the ways that our bodies are disrespected, exploited, and consumed on a daily basis, like being touched without consent, or how our bodies and sexualities are turned into jokes, fetishes, and fleeting trends. Further, when exotic women of color get equated to animals, animals often get more empathy and justice than we do. Reason 3, both media and history continue to portray exoticism in harmful ways. Stereotypes of exotic spiciness stem from histories that first perceive women of color as uncivilized and savage. The depiction of women of color as exotic from faraway lands is pervasive throughout mainstream media, from pop songs with lyrics about traveling the world to sleep with all kinds of women, to people of color depicted as props or backdrops in fashion magazines. These histories of colonization get rewritten and trivialized by popular culture. The legacies of colonization and its impact on women of color span all media. They're also woven into porn. And 4, violence against exotic bodies. The sexuality of women of color also often gets pathologized as hypersexual. For example, the media representation of Latinas follows a pattern of sexualization and exotification. When women of color are perceived as exotic, another set of behavioral expectations is imposed in terms of personality stereotypes that make us more or less desirable. Latina women should be spicy and hot-headed. Asian women should be submissive. Black women should be well-mannered and simultaneously sexual. Women of color are depicted as always wanting sex or available for sex, but not in a way that actually reflects our desire, our wants, or our needs. And these violences and abuses go unchecked. Women of color experience continued exotification in different ways, either in the forms of hyper-desire and sexualization or in the form of erasure. The exotification turns women of color into animals, props, and costumes. Calling a woman of color exotic is not only racist, but has harmful, lived impacts of how we and how our communities are treated on a day-to-day basis and on a systemic level. This was written by Rachel Kuo, a contributing writer for Everyday Feminism and a scholar and educator based in New York City.